How do you take a 6-figure e-commerce brand and scale it to 7 figures or more and exit? Hi, I'm Jaryd Krause. I'm the host of the Buying Online Businesses podcast, and today I'm speaking with Matt Edmundson, who is an investor in e-commerce businesses and an e-commerce entrepreneur, making over $75 million in sales for his own businesses and over $100 million in sales for his coaching clients. Now, he runs 2 podcasts. One is the Push to Be More podcast, and the other is the e-commerce podcast. And in this podcast episode of mine, the Buying Online Business podcast, Matt and I discuss how he partners with e-commerce brands, how he comes in as an investor, how he structures a deal with maybe a little bit of equity, earning, maybe a retainer, and how he can work his way up to acquiring more of the business through equity, and then what he does and puts in place to scale those e-commerce brands and gets them ready and exits them with the other shareholders and partners he has in those businesses. We talk about a few that he has worked on and some of the marketing strategies he has implemented into these different businesses. We talk about one specific business where he took it from about 3 million revenue to about 6 to 7 million in revenue, and what he learned in the process of doing that, and then also what he learned with single source dependency of suppliers. We also discuss values in business, values as an entrepreneur, how to define your own success as an entrepreneur, and when is the right time to actually sell your business. Now, there's so much value in this podcast episode. I know you guys are going to absolutely love it, but this is not the only way that I can help. If you're looking at buying a business, make sure you get my due diligence framework. It's what I use, it's what my clients use, it's what helped us make millions of dollars and save millions of dollars. So don't go this route blind in buying a business. Get some help, get the framework. You can get that at buyingonlinebusinesses.com/free resources. Now let's dive into the pod. Do you have a website you might want to sell either now or in the future? We have a hungry list of cashed up and trained up buyers that want to buy your content website. If you have a site making over $300 per month and want to sell it, head to buyingonlinebusinesses.co/sell your business, or email us at info@buyingonlinebusinesses.com, because we will likely have a buyer. Details are in the description. Matt, thank you for coming on the pod. Welcome.
Oh, no, it's great to be here, man. Loving it. Just first time I've spoken to someone on a podcast in Bali, so I'm a mixture of excited and envious, Jaryd. I'm not going to lie.
I get this. I would say about 75% of the people that ask me where I live get that. I get that response, actually. It's crazy. But I'm a single man. I have kids and I have a partner. It's easy for me to do that. It's very difficult and different for everybody else. And also it's quite easy, I guess, because it's only a 6-hour flight back to where I'm from, where all my family is. So
I love that. It's only a 6-hour flight. Just rolls off. It's only a 6-hour flight.
Well, for you
but
guys,
actually,
it's so far.
Yeah. Because in 6 hours, I can be in Egypt. I mean, it's crazy, when I think about where I can be in 6 hours.
Even 2 hours, right? For you guys, it's
yeah.
It's so
you
close.
Can be all over Europe.
Yeah, it's amazing. So, talking about traveling, do you do much traveling with the lifestyle that you have?
Yeah, I do, which is wonderful. So in a couple of weeks, I'm heading over to the States, speaking at an event over there. And whilst I'm over there, I'm going to go see some friends. I'm just actually, one of my to-dos today is to hire a cabin by a lake so I can go sit in a cabin for 5 days and not be near anybody, which I'm so looking forward to. And so, yeah, I do that. Most sort of February times in England, the weather is just dreadful and grey and miserable. And so that's normally when I head to the Southern Hemisphere. So I'll head over to clients, New Zealand, sometimes Australia. So yeah, I like to follow the sun. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I think a lot of Brits are the same. It's just most people that are in the position to do so will leave, and then try and chase the sun. I've got a friend that swaps he just left Bali. He's going to go down and live in Cornwall through the summer, and he'll probably do some traveling when it comes time to the bleak skies towards Christmas time.
Yeah. No, I get it. I get the appeal. I really do.
Yeah. So market. Well, we're going to talk mostly about marketing, but you're also an investor. So what sort of investor are you? What do you invest in, and why?
So at the moment, so my background is e-commerce, and at the moment we are building an e-commerce group, and so we are out there getting involved with different e-commerce companies. Usually turnover starts at about $500,000, not all the time, but usually is sort of the size that we start at. And the whole purpose is to roll them into this group, to build a group, maybe to build a group big enough to get private equity involved would be the dream. And so that's predominantly what I'm focused on at the moment, is just mainly e-com businesses. We have started conversations with more sort of related companies as well. So we go and I've started one or two conversations with a few agencies, for example, that operate in the e-com space. Do we go and acquire those in the group and build that out as well as just e-com businesses? So we're having conversations around that, looking at that at the moment. So yeah, all exciting times. It keeps me busy. It keeps me traveling, going back to the travel thing, definitely keeps me traveling.
Yeah, for sure. And so when you say you've got a group, and are you saying that you guys buy ecom businesses, or are you working, you've been in marketing for so long, are you working with e-commerce businesses, helping them grow them and then acquire them? Like, what does this, you building out a private equity group firm, how does this look for you?
Yeah, it's as you probably know. I mean, I don't want to teach you how to suck eggs, but the reality is no two businesses are ever the same, right? And so every deal is different. But where our base point, starting point is, we take a minority stake in the business, so like a 25% stake. We like to keep the owners of the business involved, and usually most of the staff of the business involved where it makes sense. And we bring in our team to supplement where it needs to be supplemented. And the sole aim, because the reality is I'm not after another job. I don't want to go and run somebody else's company when there's perfectly capable people in there. But we do want to go in, partner with them, and grow that business. So bring our expertise in growth and grow the business, work with them to get the business where it needs to be to see a good exit, at some future point, whether that's reselling that business on its own merit, whether that's rolling it up into our ecom group, or whether it's, I've not even thought about taking any company public, but I'm not going to rule it out. Do you know what I mean? Wherever the sort of the journey goes, I suppose. So that's usually our starting point, and then we see what happens, really, because like I say, every deal is different. That's the one thing I can tell you. But I'm very interested in working with businesses and investing in businesses that have good values, good strong foundation, good people involved, who maybe have sort of reached or are reaching where they feel like they can take the business and just need some help to get it to the next level and to exit well. Because as you know, building a business is one thing, selling a business is something completely different, having sold a few along the way. And so that's sort of our sweet spot, really.
Cool. So jumping in, getting, taking stake, a bit of equity in the business up to the 25%-ish range. I'm sure it's going to change, like you said, every deal's unique, and depending on what sort of marketing approach it might need or help or input from you guys. So do you sort of get a bit of a retainer, or do you earn your way into the equity, or do you acquire the equity from the get-go? Like, there's a few different ways you can go about it.
Yeah, there is. You're right. And again, every deal's different. So I would say, thinking through, the default mechanism for us is we charge a retainer, and that retainer will depend greatly on the business. Just experience here tells me it's good to have a bit of financial skin in the game from the other company's point of view. So it's not excessive. It's definitely not what we would charge for coaching or consulting. The fees are, so it's a much lower consulting fee. And then the equity we usually buy for £1 or $1. And then we decide whether to invest actual cash into that business, if we need to, or maybe there's another way that we can help. For example, one company we're talking to at the moment, deal's almost done. For them, actually, we're going to bring their fulfillment operation into our warehouse. So we have a warehouse in Liverpool, and we're going to bring their entire fulfillment operation into that warehouse. And so that's going to really, save some money for the company, and give us the cash in the business to then go grow and boost growth that way. So yeah, I like to be creative. I like to find, ways that actually make sense for the business rather than just. I always find that actually, if you try and just put something on railroads, this is the way it has to go every single time. That works for some people. For me, I don't know. I like the fact that every deal's different.
Well, I think also with the railroads sort of like, I guess, system, if you want to call it, or mentality of doing business, is it can work for the person that sets up the railroad, but if you're getting into a deal where there's many moving parts like a business that needs marketing, if it's not like really aligned with those railroads don't work for the business owner and the operation staff and all that sort of stuff, then you don't want to create some level of resentment in the deal, because that can sort of like start to, causing resentment with partners and stuff is not a good thing. And resentment, like, you might not know, or we might not know what sort of resentment is building up within somebody, because it might not be spoken to or brought up unless you've got good conflict resolution put in place, like each time you have a meeting. So yeah, I think the completely custom approach for these sorts of deals is the way to go. And also having room for adjustments as things move forwards too, to make sure everybody's like super stoked with the exit, I guess. So when you get in with a deal, do you what's the tip? I mean, we talked about railroads, but every single business is different. Like, do you have a typical time frame that you'd like to run some of your marketing strategies? And I want to talk about some of your marketing strategies soon, but is it usually a 2 to 4 or 5 year process, or where's it at? Like,
Yeah, I think e-commerce is a funny thing because you can make changes today and have an impact tomorrow, right? Yeah, with ads. I mean, even with the slightest thing, like um, we changed a piece of copy on one of our websites, and the results were palpable the next day. I mean, it was just extraordinary, the difference. And so, whether it's paid ads, whether it's changes on the website, whatever it is, you can often have some instant impact. Marketing changes work like everything else, I suppose. They work in the short term, the medium term, and the long term. And I think there are things which you do which are quick wins. There are things which you do which work in the medium term. Then long term, I would say, is definitely sort of 2 to 3 years where you go, right, this is where we want to be in. Because, again, it's an old phrase, an old saying, isn't it? But it's actually quite true. Everybody wants to sell their business in 3 years. Whenever you talk to somebody, you're with a potential deal in mind, and you sit down and you say, well, tell me, what is it you want to do? Tell me about the future. 9 times out of 10, or in 3 years, I want to exit, and and there'll be a figure in their head, and it's either 1 million or 5 million, the sort of two magic numbers, right? And so it is quite fascinating how that works. But I would say, yes, we like to have a sort of 12 to 24 month outlook in terms of marketing. And depending on where the company is, it can take 2 to 3 years to not only turn it around, but actually to build the mass that you need to get the exit that you want. So, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Well, when you guys come to sell these things, you just let me know, and I can link you guys up with buyers.
Excellent.
Or if you need some brokering or whatnot, that's the beauty about having this podcast and networking is, having people that are looking to exit and people looking to buy. It's great to link them up. So, yeah, with the marketing, so you're normally looking at helping out and working with companies doing $500,000 plus revenue, and then are you typically getting to the exit stage of 1 to 5 mil, or is there other larger ones or smaller ones? Like, where do you draw the line, sort of thing?
It's a good question. I don't know if I have a line. I think when it comes to exiting the business, the key thing is to make sure the shareholders of the businesses being sold are happy with the happy with the price that's being offered, on the understanding that it's not going to be the money's not going to be in their bank tomorrow, right? That's my other observation in all of this. Selling a business is not like selling a pair of sandals online. It's not like, oh, add to cart, there it is. There's a little bit more. If only, yeah. As you know, there's a little bit more nuance in that. So it's a lot more like buying a house. Even, selling a business in 9 to 12 months, really, from beginning to end, seems to be about average, doesn't it? So
depending on the size of the business, but typically, 6 to 12 months, in that low market to middle market range. Yeah. Like 1 mil, like seven figure deals anyway. Yeah. Up to the 8.
yeah, no, I've never, like I said, I've never taken a company public, but I've been speaking to guys that have taken companies public, and that just seems a whole different time frame and a whole different ball game, which is just beyond me right now, and I'm quite keen to learn about it in some respects, just not right now. So yeah, I think it's one of those, isn't it? It can take a little bit of time, but I think as long as the shareholders going into it know that someone's going to come up and in effect crawl up their inside leg and take all kinds of weird and wonderful measurements that they weren't expecting, and that there's going to be a bit of time involved, and that they're happy with the price and the terms. I think usually everyone wins at that point, because the person buying the company is obviously happy with the price. There's always that niggling thing in your head: could I have got more? But I think you have to just sort of accept. Well, no, am I happy with this? Yes or no? Yes. Well, okay. Well, it doesn't matter if you could have got more. You're happy with this. Let's just, life's too short to be thinking about that all the time.
Yeah, I think for people that are wanting to exit, I also think, yes, the monetary value is an important thing, but I also think the timing of in their life to sell is also plays a big part as well. And getting that right is like, it's if you're focusing on one business, which I believe people should be, if it's their primary source of income, is put all that focus onto it and then get ready to sell. And when you get rid of that, or when you sell that, you open up so much more capacity. And for people that want to do different things in their life, where it could be investing or family or whatever it is, I think that needs to align quite well as well. And I guess it can be a little bit different when you've got multiple parties or multiple shareholders in the deal. Then I guess it probably becomes a little bit more about the sale, the exit value, I guess, because it's going to be hard to get everybody's personal life situations links or in sync for an exit. Whereas like one owner, and maybe say yourself as like a 25% equity owner stake, is it's probably more personal situation than just, can I get more for it, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point about the timing. I think it's totally, a lot of it is happenstance, isn't it? In terms of right place, right time. Does it feel right? Yeah, it's a bit like selling a house. You can always make money selling your house, but do I want to? I don't know if I do right now. I get that point. It's a fair point.
There's the house example is a perfect one, because you do move based on personal preference, not so much monetary value. Or I want to spend more on a larger house. Nobody wants to really do that, right? But location is typically location, and the type of house, I guess. As you change what you want in your life, that will change. It's really personal, and I think it's so similar to a single business owner, or a one person owner or founder of a company. Now, marketing, it's really cool. So you've helped a lot of companies do really, really well, scale to the 9 figures in revenue. And you've got a bit of a system. Tell us about your system, your slingshot framework.
So I'm a big fan of this. Have you ever heard of the story? You're familiar with the David and Goliath story, the old ancient story of David and Goliath, how the little guy took on the giants and won? I don't know if you've ever read the book David and Goliath by Malcolm Gladwell. Really fascinating book about
Malcolm Gladwell is the author. He's a great author, isn't he?
Oh yeah, no, and he wrote this book, David and Goliath, talking about how the underdog wins, and just really great book, tying it into that old story. So I call a lot of e-commerce entrepreneurs digital Davids. I liken them to David in the story, because we're the little guys taking on Amazons and Walmarts, and all these kind of big crazy guys with insanely deep pockets. And how do you do that, and how do you win? It's a really interesting question. And so I just coined this phrase, digital Davids. So slingshot is the reason why is the reason behind the name, because obviously David had a slingshot. So what's our framework? All the stones inside the slingshot, if I really want to take the analogy so deep. We think that, having done this a little while, I think that there's 7 areas of e-commerce that you have to focus on. So assuming you've got the foundations in place, right? So your values, your operations, your team, that's the given. There are 7 areas which I think you have to look at. Number 1 is product. What is it I'm trying to sell, and is there demand for it? How much do I know about it? How can I sell this in a way which is unique, which ties into number 2, which is all about branding. It's about your story. It's about the customer story and how those 2 things tie together. And actually, it's probably one of the most important things to think about. We then move into the technology, so tech stack. We move into number 4 is marketing. So, how do we take the technology? How do we market our business in a way that people want to come to our website and buy? Number 5 then is about optimization. So once they're on a website, how do we get them to buy more stuff? How do we get them to increase all those magic numbers that we need to track, which is super, super important. Number 6 then is about experience. So what happens to the customer after they've hit that buy now button? What goes on at that point? So the whole customer experience side of thing. It's probably
about like the buyer's journey as well as the client's journey, I guess.
Yeah, it's one of those where, for me, if I look at all the businesses that I go into and do coaching with, probably the one area where I can almost guarantee that something could change and have move the needle for the company. It's in this whole area of experience, what the customer experience is. Because if you think about what happens on a website, you've got into the website, they've bought the product, they've hit the buy now button, and especially if this is their first time with you, there is this uncertainty all of a sudden, because up until now everything has been pixels. Everything we've done with you is digital, it's pixels, it's not real really, it's just something on a screen. And so what happens after that buy now has been done and the card details have been put in, from the very first seconds to the first email that you send them, the follow-up sequence, how you package the product, what they do if they contact customer service, what delivery company you use, how do they feel when they open your product, the opening experience, all of those kind of things matter massively. There's a great story that I like to tell people about popcorn here, because we had a beauty business, an online beauty business. I sold it a couple of years ago. And in that business, we looked at these 7 areas. Sorry, the 7th area, by the way, is growth. How do we grow the business? Repeatability and referability. Just close the loop for anyone taking notes. But in this whole experience, we were looking at it and we were thinking, why does a customer buy from us? Why do they spend, on average, £75, which is about $100? Why do they spend that much money on skincare, right? A moisturizer. Why would you do that? Now, we looked deep and hard into that. So this is all number 2, branding, story, understanding the customer story. And we realized, actually, when people were buying the skincare, they were treating themselves. They were buying themselves a gift. And so it wasn't something that was functional. It was something that was to make them feel better about themselves. Do you know what I mean? There was very much a psychology here. And so I remember sitting down with the team and going, right, how do we make what we send more gift-like? Because they're buying a gift. So instead of sending it in the standard Jiffy bag, the padded envelope, or the standard just cardboard box, we were like, what would happen if we put an extra flap? Bizarre question, but if we put an extra flap on that box to make it so the opening experience was delayed and anticipated a bit more, to make it feel like there was something special in there? What if we printed something on the box that was just lovely and made you feel so much better about yourself? And then when you open the box, you come to some tissue paper. And so you have to then open the tissue paper. Now it's starting to feel like a gift. What would happen if we put 1 or 2 drops of essential oil in there to make it smell lush? And so we were like, let's make the unboxing experience really magical. And bearing in mind, this cost me an extra 2 pence, which is like 3 cents, isn't it? 3 US cents. It's not a lot of money we were spending here. And the other thing that we did was, because we were like, understanding our story a little bit, we wanted to be a bit quirky and a bit fun. And so at the time we were sending out the beauty products with, do you remember I don't know if you remember them, the sort of the plastic pillows that you would find, you'd order stuff online and they'd come in a box with a bunch of plastic pillows to sort of pad it out. And we were like, yeah, they're the air pillows. Yeah, yeah. And so we were like, I just don't, they're not very sustainable, not good for the brand story, not good for the environment. Customers don't really like them, etc., etc. And so we just had a bit of a, you know, a brain fart, as I like to call it, one day. And we just decided, what would happen if we used popcorn as a packaging material? And of course, no one had ever used popcorn as a packaging material at this point in their life. We're like, we don't know. We know nothing about it. So we went away and we tested, I think it was over 20 different types of corn. I mean, it was just bizarre what we got into. And in the warehouse, we installed these popcorn machines that, you know, you get like at the cinema or at a fairground or something. We just had loads of them in the warehouse and they were constantly making popcorn, just popping this corn all the time. And so the warehouse smelt like a permanent popcorn place. And if you wanted a low calorie snack, you just had plenty of popcorn on tap. And we put popcorn in the boxes as a packaging material. Well, let me tell you, after changing all of that, so you get this, instead of just a plain brown blocks with plastic, you know, air pillows in, you now had a brown box that was printed. There was a delayed opening experience. There was tissue paper inside, which had a nice sticker on. You open that, there was popcorn as a packaging material, which had that sort of smell and that sort of fun about it. Everybody started to post about this.
I
and
was
so
going to
no
say,
one,
it's super Instagrammable, right? Like the unboxing experience is so good for branding, and it's really hard to get measured ROI on that, but it's massive, right?
oh, it's huge. And what happened was you could see it in the return customer rate. So repeat orders went up. And I couldn't say that.
They love the skincare.
You know what? It was one of those things where we had to put a sticker on the packaging, because I remember the customer service team came to me one day and they said, Matt, listen, people are eating this popcorn. We need to be aware of this. You know, one lady wrote that she was sat down with her grandson and at the popcorn watching a movie right after she bought the product. So we had to, I mean, it was a bit tongue in cheek, but we were like, guys, this is not produced in a food safe environment. I really want everyone to be aware of that. So we put a sticker on the packaging, which just said, listen, the popcorn's great for the birds, but probably not best for your own stomachs, just because the environment's where it was produced. But everyone loved it. You know, not 99% of people loved it. There's always the 1% that don't. But yeah, really, really interesting play. And that was all because we were playing around with this concept of the customer experience.
That really that crosses a few things. You got these 7 sort of, I guess, parts of the business that really crosses a fair few of them. If you look at them in a like, if you put it together like a Venn diagram, like you've got that covers product, that covers branding, covers marketing, covers experience and growth. So it covers back 5 things in there. Maybe not so much the tech and optimization, but yeah, it's really really awesome. And I've experimented with that. I owned a suit brand. We used to do tailor-made suits called Suit Me Up, and yeah, we changed our packaging, we changed our branding, how people would open it and the experience, and we noticed that, you know, people were giving us far more feedback after getting it and happier to share it. It's people are kind of want to go like, wow, you went the extra mile, we want to go the extra mile, and give you that feedback. And you can start to use that through your marketing with, you know, screenshots of the feedback that people have presented you, and, you know, putting that, you know, throughout different video clips is huge for social proof, right? Like, it's very valuable. So I want to ask you about a brand or a company that you guys partner with and you help them scale, and then made an exit. Where did you, like, at what stage do you start working with them? What were some of the things that you did? And then what was the sort of exit that you guys got to? How did it look in that sort of?
Yeah, it's an interesting. So, I mean, going back to that beauty brand, that was somebody that a similar sort of deal. When I look back to how it all began, we took an equity stake in that business. We grew that business. The business almost collapsed one day. I would quite happily take the blame for that, but I can actually, in this occasion, put that firmly on one of our suppliers. I can't actually. I mean, we learned a lot through it, but we then regrew the business. and then exited that business a couple of years ago. And when you've exited a business well, because the other shareholder and I are still good friends to this day, and so we still call each other up. Hey, how you doing? And I think it was the right time for that company to sell. That company, I owned 50%. I started out with a smaller equity stakes, 20%. The business grew. I owned 50% of the business, and my business partner, he owned 50% of the company. So when we exited, we were joint partners. And it was a wonderful experience in many ways. And in many ways, like I say, we had to ride. I mean, resilience was a big thing. It was not the dream. When we got involved with the company, the turnover was maybe, I guess, 3 million, somewhere around there. We got involved. Within 2 years, we'd got the turnover up to 6 million. So I can't remember the exact number, 6-7 million sterling. And so really, in the early days, we were absolutely flying. And what we should have done is exited at that point. When I look back at it, but we didn't. And we thought, let's just ride this wave. It wasn't that we tried. We were having conversations with an ecom group here in the UK about them buying us, and they never sort of materialized really. But what I never did was actively sought other buyers for that company, which I probably should have done at that point in time.
Right.
But we would just
was that point of time when you had an issue with supplier around that 6 or 7 mil range, and then you had a hiccup, and then
yeah. So what happened was the website. 80% of our sales came from one supplier, and so this is what
I call that.
Sorry,
we call that single source dependency revenue. Single dependency. Yeah,
and it was a problem, and we didn't realize it was a problem at the time because we were just riding this wave. And I'll never forget it. One day at the start of the year, I didn't even get a phone call, didn't get no warning, no conversation. We just got a letter from the company. I mean, it's bizarre, isn't it? How these things work out. But the company sent us a letter saying, basically, effective 20 days previously to when I received the letter, there was a new pricing policy, and they were instituting this pricing policy, which basically said the more you buy, the more you pay.
Wow. Opposite incentive as usual.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can look at it and I can go, well, from my point of view, that obviously doesn't make sense. They had a policy at the time which basically said nobody got any discounts. So just because I was selling millions of the pounds worth of product, if you were buying that product, you would buy it at the same price that I did. And so they would claim that they were protecting their brand. I wouldn't claim because I don't want to get sued for libel, but I would question whether they were price fixing. And I would question also whether what they started to do was put the internet retailers' prices up so much that they started to make much better offers on their own website. So they wanted to sell the product, right? They wanted to go direct to consumer. And I understand that's business practice. I understand. But at the same time, they disregarded quite dramatically the people that helped them get to where they were. They sort of, there were 4 or 5 of us that were doing quite well, and they just sort of railroaded everybody and then did it themselves. Now, some may applaud that as good business practice. I'm not saying one way or the other whether it's good or bad. I'm saying that it had a massive impact on us as a business. I think I call it, when I talk about the slingshot framework, I call it my $34 million mistake, because I think that's how much in sales we lost as a result of that one decision. But if I look at the framework, I can see why we weren't doing well. And this is where the framework came from, because we were good at 1 or 2 areas of that framework, but we didn't think about all 7 areas at all. And so it's a bit like, the analogy I use is a bit like a guy who goes to the gym and just does arms. Do you know what I mean? He's got massive arms, but his legs are like chicken legs. Skips legs day and all that sort of stuff. And so that was us in a business sense. And so whilst I do not agree with their decision at all, and I think actually it was probably slightly immoral, I do recognize that in that we learned a lot, and a lot has come out of it. A lot of good has come out of it.
I'm with you. I've learned that lesson myself with single source dependency on a supplier in an e-commerce business that I owned. we were selling hanging chairs, and we had one supplier. Oh, sorry, we had it's probably like 90% of them was, they supplied 90% of our product, and we had a few other small ones. And this guy quickly got wind that we were doing well, obviously from sales and our marketing, and decided, well, this guy's selling it from his site really well. Why don't we sell it from our site? And then just stopped good communication with us and started sending out broken products to our customers. So then we'd have to refund them, and then they would go and buy from him. And it was just like, dude, it was pretty bad. And anyway, I ended up selling the business because the person that was acquiring the business had contacts with other suppliers that they could come and put in place. So it was an awesome win. So yeah, I mean, it's single source dependency, not just on income, but the products and so many things is scary in business. And so what did you get that? So you obviously got past that hiccup, and then what was the result, the exit? What did that look like?
Well, the exit would have been much better had we have sold when we were turning over 6-7 million. That beauty business didn't get back to the 6-7 million under my leadership. I think we'd all got slightly deflated. What we did was we went and got other brands. This is where I discovered things like the power of podcasting to help me grow business. Things just that you would never have expected, which I'm dare saying you've found as well, right? And we got in other suppliers. We grew that business. It became much more stable. We became less supply dependent. We started our own beauty brands, for example. And so, yeah, it was actually one of our competitors came and made the offer to buy during COVID, when everybody wanted digital businesses. And so, which meant we got a much higher multiple, which was a great time to sort of exit, really. But yeah, it's an interesting one, because looking back on it, part of me still regrets selling the company. Part of me still thinks, I wonder what would happen if I'd have bought out the other shareholder and owned it 100% still, especially in relation to the group that I am now building. Would its valuation now be much higher? But you never know, do you? And that's I think when it came to the exit, do I think we could have got more money for it? Probably. But the money wasn't really the key motivator. It was part of it. Both my business partner and I had to be happy with the sums of money that we were getting for the sale of the business. But coming back to what you said about timing, the benefit for me was timing. And I think it was right to sell at that point in time to maintain our friendship. I think had the business have carried on, I just wonder if that because partnerships, they're great, but I feel like they have a lifetime. And it's, towards the end of that sort of lifespan, you start to get really agitated, annoyed with each other. So having a clear exit plan, I think is essential for partnerships. It really is. But yeah, I still maintain that actually keeping that friendship is probably the most valuable thing that's come out of it.
Good word. Really good word. Valuable. Like the value that you have from that friendship is more than the financial gain of the exit. And I typically tell people when they acquire online business, typically there's, far more value in the relationship than the asset that you end up purchasing, typically. And also, I find that time in business, like I know what happened to me when I was running that e-commerce business and I was the main operator. The longer I was in it, the more I resented being in that type of business model, and it sort of created some agitation within me that I just wasn't liking the space and enjoying it. And then it's a personal thing where it's like it's a really good time to leave, because that can be doing so much more damage to you personally that can reflect what you do in the future in any other sort of project. And I don't think people as entrepreneurs really care for themselves first, instead of the asset or the business, and don't realize that the end of the day, they are the asset. The businesses will come and go, but if they, destroy themselves in little aspects or big aspects, that it can really tarnish the experience or how you run a business or the decisions you make in the future as well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. And this is why I think bringing it back to your first point. I'm excited about our roll up with Ecom and our partnership with the groups, because actually we're talking to people that have sort of come to an end of themselves, and that, do you know what I mean? And actually you just need someone just running alongside you, just taking the baton off you for a little while, or geeing you along, that support. Because I think running a business by yourself, even if you're a married couple running the business, or you're doing it with a friend or whatever, it's still quite a lonely place to be. And so yeah, I think again that's a valuable aspect of it, isn't it? It's just sometimes, like we were talking with a company last week, maybe do a deal, maybe you won't. This particular one I'm not entirely sure about, but for them, you dig into the reason why they want to sell. It's not because they've got designs of a big exit. They just want to get out of the debt and the personal guarantees, because they're just hustling so much every day just to make the debt repayments. They're like, they don't want to lose their house fundamentally. And so it's a real interesting one, isn't it? Because of the belief and the desire that this company can and should succeed, can lead you down a path where 2 years later you're regretting it, because you've got this debt and these personal guarantees that are just a mill around your neck, really.
Absolutely. And I think that's where we are, I wouldn't say all of us, but through consuming media, we can get conditioned into believing what a type of success would look like. And typically, making money and being good in business is what most people would call successful. However, if you redefine or create your own values personally, and you adjust those values as you walk through life and your life changes, then you've achieved success, because you know what I believe you've worked out what your values are, and you get to live by them. And then within business, if the business isn't feeding your value system anymore, then it's time to move on. And that's where the personal situation, the personal like time to sell or acquire or do something else in business is so important, because then you're not like eating away at your values, and then you just become lost as a human being if you do that for too long, I believe.
Oh, I totally agree. I heard again a great analogy: football or soccer, as maybe the rest of the world calls it. And I heard a great analogy with this, that if you think about values as the boundary, the field of play, and vision as the goal at the end of it. If those who live lives which are just totally vision orientated, there's no boundaries, and therefore they'll do anything to achieve that goal. Those that just live in their boundaries, just live with values, can often go around aimless, as in they don't, do you know what I mean? They look back and they've had something's good happen, but they're not quite sure. There's not been something to drive towards. But when you mix both together, you actually get to play this game called life quite well. And the beauty of that, and I love the analogies, because actually with football, sometimes, without going again too deep, you've got to pass backwards or sideways to go forwards. And that's okay, because you're operating within your boundaries. It's not about, I have to go from A to B and B has to be in front of A, otherwise I'm regressing. Actually, you're going, I'm going to go 50,000 different directions, but I'm okay with that, because I'm operating in this boundary set, which is my values. And at some point, if I just keep passing, if I keep moving, ultimately I'm going to achieve the goal, right? And I'm going to hopefully have more goals going in rather than goals against me. Do you know what I mean? I'm going to have more wins and losses. And so that's what I often say. I often say that, I'm successful because I've just had my successes have far outweighed my failures, and that's a beautiful thing. And I love the conversation about values. I do. And I think it's one of those conversations that's still not had enough, understanding what your values are, both personally as a business. Where are we prepared to operate? What field are we prepared to play in? And as a result of that, how does that outwork? What's the goal we're trying to achieve over the next, 6 months, 12 months?
Absolutely. I think I was surfing. I went for a surf trip a couple of weeks ago with a friend, and we're talking about doing something.
Of course you did, because you live in Bali, right?
Yeah. We just went to a
I don't
different
do that in Liverpool. Don't go surfing the Mersey River.
Yeah.
I watch football. So let's go with the surfing analogy now. Yeah.
And we were talking about food. We're quite into our health as well. And we're talking about eating something that wasn't, completely healthy, but made him feel good. And I said to him, sometimes it's not about what you do. Sometimes it's more so about how it makes you feel. And it's the same in business as well. Like you can do, like, you can run a certain strategy in business and you can either feel really good about it or not so good about it. But, as long as you know your morals and your values and it's making you feel good, then go with it, right? Of course, if it's just, if it's like a just strategy. But yeah, sometimes it's not about what you do, it's about how it makes you feel. So I'm leaning.
Yeah, and I think if I was going to take it further than that, I think it's about the impact on humanity as well. That it's a bit like why one of the reasons I didn't want to use plastic air bubbles was, popcorn created this wonderful story, with our clients. But fundamentally, me not using plastic bubbles, it doesn't have a massive impact on the environment, but it has an impact because I was sending out thousands of parcels, and I think it was interesting. There was a report, wasn't there, a few years ago, the Trust report. I can't remember who did it. And where obviously trust in governments and politicians is an all-time low. And I wonder why, the sort of segregation of people really, and the extremism and the inability to talk. I mean, we could go all day along about that. But I think what the report came out with, which I thought was interesting, was people's trust in business was at an all-time high. And I think as business owners and as entrepreneurs, it's on us to do the right thing and not just, outsource that to government, but actually to make the right choices that are good for our business, but obviously also good for the planet. And I think good for the people. I was involved in I was a non-exec director on a fair trade business. So I got to see it firsthand that actually when you have a responsible supply chain, the impact is phenomenal on people in the third world. And I think, as entrepreneurs, we have that ability, which is why and not to get too political, but I think if you're sourcing products from China, I don't have an issue with that. Some of our products come from China, but I think wherever they come from, you have to know your supply chain and you have to know what's going on along that whole sphere of things, from beginning to end, whether you're buying from China, Thailand, wherever, South Africa, somewhere in Africa, wherever it's coming from, know your supply chain because there are other people's livelihoods at stake here. And I think having been so badly treated by a supplier as you have as well, I just want to make sure that I'm not that supplier treating someone else badly down the chain, even without realizing it. So I think, sorry, I'm gonna get off my soapbox now, just to emphasize that what's good for me, but also what's good for other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it's more of a collective thing because, if I could say, hey, I'm the one that grew my business, it's all about me. Well, not really. My customers told me what they wanted, what they needed, and I just adhered to giving them that. So it's really, they grew it. And it's the same with most businesses. They're the real heroes that help us if we know how to tune ourselves in and to listen to them. But Matt, it's been such a great chat. Thank you so much for coming on. Where can we send people to find out more about you?
Oh, just go to the website, mattedmundson.com, and there'll be all kinds of links to whatever you need to go from there. Or hunt me out on social media, Matt Edmundson. That's EDMUNDSON. And the reason I say that is because there's a Matt Edmundson spelt with an O rather than a U in the UK, and he's like a well-known radio DJ. And so he's got like Matt Edmundson, and I've got Matt Edmundson, but obviously spelt slightly differently. So I keep getting requests from people saying, "Oh, can you play this on the radio?" He must get really odd requests from people. I should reach out to him one day. He must get really odd requests from people going, would you mind looking at my ecom business?
Yeah. Imagine. You should reach out to him. That'd be great.
I really should. Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. Thanks, guys. Everybody that's listening, thank you so much for listening. I don't typically ask you guys to do much ever in podcast episodes, but I thought I was looking at reviews on podcasts the other day, and I thought I haven't really asked people to do a review on the app. So if you're feeling that you got value from this or any other podcast that I've done before, please share a review. I greatly appreciate it. And thanks again, Matt. I'll speak to you guys soon.
Hey YouTube watcher, if you thought that video was good, you should check out this video here on the 2 best types of websites beginners should buy. Or check out my playlist on how I made my first 100K from buying websites and how to do due diligence. Check it out. It's an awesome playlist. You'll enjoy it.